can't tell if we're recording. There we go.
Okay, very good. This is collective bargaining between IRCEA and School District of Indian River County. This is July
23rd.
23rd.
COVID day, 900,
Yeah.
April
just,
374th.
go around the table and everybody introduce themselves for our records. I'm Michelle Oak, Director of Labor Relations and Human Resources here in the district.
Scott Bass, Deputy Superintendent.
David Moore, Chief COVID Officer and Superintendent.
Liz Cannon, IRCEA.
Jennifer Freeland, IRCEA.
Matt Rollo, IRCEA.
Sorry, Matt, one more time.
Matt Rollo, IRCEA.
Edwina Suit District.
Thank you very much.
Perfect timing.
It's coming through. I couldn't get the audio. So, yeah.
Okay. Good. So we had bargaining the other day. We came up with a number of issues that we need to get some answers to and kind of work through here at the district. And so we're coming together today with the hopes of finishing and completing an MOU that we can all get behind as we launch our plans for school opening under the COVID-19 situation. So I brought all of these questions and concerns to our district subject matter experts, and so I think I have a lot of answers for the stuff that we discussed the other day. So if we would like to just kind of, I'll go through the issues that I summarized in terms of what we could potentially have in an MOU, and I thought perhaps I would really go through it.
I would like to say something briefly so that it's on the recording. Don't scratch your head, Dr. Moore, it's okay. We're here because it has been announced in several faculty meetings and in several emails that have gone out from faculty that things are in place such as teacher schedules using split platforms. They'll be both virtual and in person. We specifically talked about this before, and that wasn't anything close to what we talked about. We're also heard today that it's been announced that 100% of that 30 minutes that we talked about was going to be used for the first quarter. We heard that today as well. We heard several things today being announced as if it's done. Those are just examples, and we have not negotiated. We have explained this in every meeting we've been in that things will have to be negotiated. Rubber has to hit the road eventually. And in general, that wouldn't bother me, except that we have now spent all of this time talking to our members, letting them know, nope, county's got us, we're taken care of, look, they've got it, we've got it, we've got it, only to find out that we don't. Yeah, we feel very bypassed. This is exactly the stuff that has happened from other administrations that I have promised my members is not going to happen with this administration. I've spent more time than I can count making sure that everything that comes from IRCEA is supportive of the district. This did not come out well at all on your part this time.
And we appreciate you making those comments, and that's, why we wanted to again come together today. Let's figure out what those issues are. Let's make sure that that works for all sides of our community here so that we can move forward. Because as we know, the COVID scenario is like a kaleidoscope. It's moving really fast. The picture changes every day. Even, Dr. Suit and Mr. Bass and myself yesterday came across a situation that slightly changed some things in our leave communication process. So we had to pivot. And so we are finding that even the smallest of details are subjecting the district to this kind of stuff. So we do appreciate that comment you're making. We're also trying to get our district administrators and things, straight and clear of what they're supposed to do. But on no account does that mean that it's, the district's intention to bypass or not include you guys as our partners in those movements. So I just want to put that out there that it's an imperfect thing. It's a hard landing, but I still want us to come together and try to resolve those issues as they come up in this imperfect situation.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add too, it was never, after talking to y'all a little while ago, it was never our intention to do anything that would violate the contract in any way, shape, or form.
For you, as,
And I realize that putting some of the stuff out the way we did has put you in that position where you can apologize for that, because we have been working real well together. I don't want anything to damage that relationship that we have already developed and are continuing to build on. So,
And I would like to, we understand, and we are flexible, we understand that things had to come out, but it was our impression that we were still going to talk on
No,
this.
and I would say, through the chair, direct. My intent in these conversations has always been that, and I think as you speak, truth to your disappointment, I'm equally disappointed, because I have been intentional in the think tanks, I've been intentional in sharing information with the principals. We just had two great days of leadership training, first of its kind here in the county, of saying, hey, you know, we're working through this together.
Which, by the way, I've heard very positive comments.
Yeah, it was fun. I wanted it to be 3 days. I wanted it really just to fire everybody up and be excited. And, you know, I'm speaking and there's 20 people in the room and then another 20 people over here. It came off and left everyone excited, but you know, with the midst of COVID, it still wasn't what I wanted, but it was absolutely outstanding work by everyone who put it together, as well as those who participated. So it's a great start to a very challenging year. So as I kind of reflect back, as Mr. Bass shared with me, like how did this happen? I think some of it is principals really digging into the work, and us, we are saying, hey, let's work together, let's solve problems, let's get folks back into the buildings, because they're going to help identify problems that we haven't even thought of. The variables are tremendous, and the story I've been telling, even with the principals individually as well as with the leadership teams, is we gotta get all the pieces to the puzzle on the table. And we can't build this puzzle from a district perspective or school site perspective until we understand anything. And having all the puzzle pieces on the table allows us to begin the problem. And the only direction that was given to me is to start to group students in the identified courses in which they currently are, and then meet with Mr. Meyer's team so we can get guidance or feedback on how we're going to solve the pieces of the puzzle. And I'm sure principals, as I was a principal, said, okay, I'm going to solve my own problem because I don't want to be told this, that, or the other. I think that is some of it. But from a district perspective, if there's guidance being given to anybody on A, B, C, or D, that's not good, because the reality is, I think from a district perspective, we should be normed on, hey, let's figure it out, let's walk through the methodology, and truthfully, it will be different from school to school. And we need to be intentional, and I've said this a number of times. This is a really complex problem to solve, but a very, you know, I think systematic, or looking at systems. It's, you know, how do we solve it and protect everybody? And if we go school site to school site, we are not going to protect everybody. We need to maximize the flexibility these plans have to ensure that we have meaningful experiences for absolutely everyone, and it protects us going into this year and protects us going into next year. So my goal, and I have been pushing, I know Ms. Oak probably sees me coming down the hallway and turns around, is let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And the one thing I won't apologize for is push. I think the push is something, no offense, Ms. Oak, that folks here aren't used to.
No.
And the reality is in some ways, let's go. I'm gonna put together, if it takes me all weekend to put together a document, it's gonna take me all weekend to put together a document. And let's push. And we need to get to an agreement. And I think as I look at the things, I'm like, okay, let's get there. And always put the provision in there. I know when we get back to schools, some of the better answers or solutions are gonna come from teachers.
They are.
And,
I agree.
And that's it. Well, come through the dialogue and the conversation of, hey, let's get this. And one of the things I think it was Scott yesterday, if there's a good idea, then we're all going to do it. We're all going to do it. You know, we need to be consistent across the district and move away from the days where this one innovative school is doing all these really neat, unique things and growing leaps and bounds. And because there's no oversight or no expectation in this particular school, it's not the same. So I think some of it was created by me, and I don't know how else to say it, and I hate that it happens. But the push won't stop, but the consistency on how we deliver the message, and it needs to improve. But I hope there isn't an email that will come to my attention. If there is, please send it to me. Where a district staffer is giving the direction on how to build master schedules, because I know what's happening today is the thought process, which is collective between the district, Mr. Meyer's team, as well as principals on understanding the variables that are presenting themselves to find the answer. So my goal was that Monday or Tuesday, let's push that information out and push it out in a way where we know, hey, this is the class size, this is the ratios, this is when we're going to share teachers, this is the combinations of this, that, or the other. Those are the conversations that we really need to know when we have numbers. So I understand it will get better, the push in terms of how we communicate in the midst of COVID. And you know, I tell my wife every day.
And we don't want to slow the process. That's not.
No, I
that's
don't
not our
think
goal.
you are, but the process is going to be slow enough
Well,
because.
Yeah.
And I figure as we're there, this is one of the reasons I really like the 2-week push, is because while we're there, we're going to find things that we need, and we're going to have to come back and sit right here
Yeah.
and figure it
Yeah,
and put it on
exactly.
paper.
One phrase that can help principals that I think would make us feel a little bit more comfortable. Some of this is still subject to negotiations. If they add that phrasing, it acknowledges that process.
Understood.
And
agreed.
I just think that if that phrasing comes out, I think that would definitely help us.
All right, no, we'll push that today.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can agree, but.
Well, and as we said, things are going to.
Time and it gives us time.
This is going to be a fluid process because there's going to be working conditions that all of a sudden we didn't know about.
At the board meeting.
Yeah,
The CDC, the health department is presenting modified recommendations,
Return to work.
return to work.
But they were
We had
new.
put it in the document Sunday. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna produce the document as late as possible, so it's as accurate as possible. Sunday evening, I sent it out 5:30.
it changed.
And it was the same, what you put in here was what we heard sitting in here.
Yeah.
And then it was different by the time they came to the school board meeting.
Right, yeah, and that just, I think that just shows how, that's true, that is transparency. I mean, they came in, we worked with them on one day, and the lady, which I had to borrow my full staff back, said, listen, she's up there from her recollection, giving the new policy. We need to make sure that her recollection is right. I think it's one day, it turned out that her recollection was pretty spot on. But let's fully digest and fully understand, and this is a manual. I mean, even, I think the first thing I did Monday morning is, you know what? Schedule another board meeting, because there's no way. Well, I want a board meeting every week to ensure that we're ready for the opening of schools, regardless of what happens, it continues to grow. I mean, you can't predict COVID. So I think now we're in a situation, plan-wise, board meeting pretty much every week. So if there's modifications that need to take place, preparing a kind of a scaled out what needs to get done by when, we have that available. And even as we come to agreement, there will be other things that are going to be learned. Wait a minute, we didn't think about this. Let's circle back. And as good as we are in terms of saying, what if, there's no way.
We can't address every what if.
I'll take your word.
Some of it we'll have to address as we get there. It's just how it's going to happen.
Yeah, so going through some of those themes and topics that we had discussed the other day.
Okay.
And I believe we have a lot of good answers back about some of the questions. And so therefore, I've come up with, kind of our district proposal with respect to the MOU on that topic.
So are we still using this?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, so, I wanted to propose to you that this plan, okay?
Do you want me to put it, wait, I can pop it up there.
Reopening plan, school reopening plan is an addendum to our active MOU,
Okay.
but we acknowledge both sides that this is a living document that's gonna change throughout this process. All right, that being said, we agree that we'll continue to negotiate the impacts of all of that as this stuff comes up, to give us all flexibility. So I was thinking that's one thing we could probably agree on.
We can.
Okay. One of the themes that we talked about last time that had a lot of questions attached was masks, right? So the standard within this plan at this moment is that people would wear masks when social distancing is not possible. Okay, and we believe that the IRCEA can probably agree to that. Understanding that masks and other disposable supplies such as the face shields and things like that, the disinfectants, all these tools of the trade that we're gonna need will be supplied by, and that MBUs can supply their own if they have a personal, mask that's very comfortable, like, or is a particular material they prefer.
Or an
Or
IRCEA
the one that
mask.
says
Or
IRCEA.
an IRCEA mask, which, these guys have a good marketing crew that they use, by the way.
Us.
Yeah, so,
We are everything.
yeah, so, really this is
With
kind
help.
of establishing the, sort of the management rights rules with respect to changes of the work environment, but that we're impacted, the impacts of that is what we're bargaining here at the table. So that this would be the governing document during this emergency period as defined by Executive Order 2015. Those would expire concurrently. So that's kind of my first proposal.
Included in there, sorry, Michelle.
No, please.
Opportunities that we can provide to be more explicit on defining social distancing and not having an impact. So as I listened to Michelle, I said, you know what, teachers create a space in their classroom where they can be socially distanced, and there should be no ramification or negative consequences for not doing other things that you typically would do outside of the midst of COVID. I don't know how you would word that,
Right.
but I want to wear my mask as minimally as possible. This policy, whatever this is, gives me the flexibility of creating a space in my room where I can be socially distanced. And as anyone comes in my room, there should be no negative anything that happens as a result of being within that social distance space. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but being very specific, saying, I'm giving my lecture, I'm going to be here. Typically, in a non-COVID world, I would be, I would be, guided from the side in that particular situation. Okay, but when I would do that, then I would put my mask on. But creating something on the front end that says it's fine to have a socially distanced classroom, and every intent should be given by the teacher and supported by the administration to create socially distanced environments for all.
And I think that's what we talked about, was clarifying
Yes.
what social
Yep.
distancing, because in some spaces it's 3 foot, there's some recommendations it's 3 foot, there's some that it's 6 foot. We don't know where CDC has gone yet, if that has
The current is
changed.
still 6 foot.
Okay.
But there has been discussion that could evolve, and that's what we mean by a living document with this thing, because that could change tomorrow after we have,
And one thing I communicated to the principals this morning, our meetings, is I want them, each school, to have a set up sample room that has social
Yeah, I
distancing
offered
in
my
it.
room up.
And that would be something good if you guys can, whether, I don't know if we're gonna go to every sample room in the district, but let's go and look and put eyes on it, and see where we see there's issues and where if it works or not. We've got to move stuff out of rooms to make that
Kind of
space available.
Speaking
an
of
example of the
that.
standard, so people can kind of go, okay, I can do this.
There's.
Well, can I just jump in here real
Sure,
quick?
I have it written down.
One thing that instead of just referring to masks, I think we should just use the terminology face coverings, because the shield could be used for those who are more comfortable with it. Pull up, and this way it's all encompassing as opposed to restrictive.
That's an excellent idea. And again, we want teachers to have the control to set that up. If they're not, comfortable always having their mask on, they can set up their classroom in such a way that when they,
Mhm.
when it's possible to social distance, they don't necessarily have to have it on. But when they're in those situations where it is not possible, and they're gonna be student facing, everybody's right on top of you, we would like the IRC to agree that it makes sense from a health and safety standpoint to have people don face coverings in those scenarios.
Perfect.
And would the response to a lack of doing that be similar to that of the students?
So we talked about that a little bit, because I had to, like I told you before, lean on my educational experts to get an answer to that stuff instead of Michelle
Mhm.
pulling it out of her hind end. We talked about, what if students have parents that are like, no, my kid is not wearing a mask? What
I mean,
Kids are
as
gonna
you,
define it.
as you go through these negotiations, I will honor and commit to teachers being teachers. You will not be mask police. If a student refuses to wear a mask, obviously you would ask them once, but if not, the process to have the student removed, and he would only come back when he's wearing a mask. Not your job to be
The
the police,
enforcer.
the enforcer of that, whether it's, temperature checks in the morning. It's not your job to argue this, that, or the other. No, you go here, that's on those professionals, counselors, administration to do that work. Timing or planning will not be, infringed upon by any means. Matter of fact, planning, we may even have to pull apart or pull back on some of the common planning things. We want to keep lessons aligned to be stable because kids will be moving as much as we can, but probably a reduction in intentional common planning because the level of planning may be a little bit different regarding the level of comfort with how we're providing instruction.
I also discussed with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Bass about that situation you guys said where, you send them down the hall and then immediately they're sent right back. And teachers are concerned that they would be seen as, a troublemaker and some of this, particularly the annual teachers who feel a little shy about pushing back on some of these things. And so I'll let you comment on.
Yeah, no, I mean, you, just like you said, you're not gonna be the police. I mean, once you send them out, then my expectation for the administration is you handle that, and we've got to have parameters in place for students and parents if you refuse to do that. I mean, we're not just now talking about, okay, a student he's breaking the code of conduct because he's acting up in school. Now we're talking about you're potentially infecting other kids and or staff by not wearing a mask when you can't be socially distanced. So that's something that we were going to handle on the administrative end that we're not going to put on the teachers.
But I think it probably would have a higher level of comfort if we were more explicit in the particular plan.
And there was a couple of places in here where we talked about just being more explicit. For one, as you're talking about teachers not having to do temperature checks, the section that it has us checking for symptoms, the way that's worded is not good for teachers.
Yeah, and I think as we go through, and as I told the board, it's going to be more specific as time draws near, and we can scrub the document, for lack of a better saying, to be more specific where we need to clearly define. And the goal is, I think at this board meeting was to say, hey, here's an overarching plan, but really to create this as to what will be a manual that defines roles and responsibilities and expectations of everyone. And that's kind of scoping out what we're done. I think this draws a really good picture for where we were 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I think.
It's still mostly current.
Yeah,
It's
mostly, but it was intentional as you read it, because some of it wasn't negotiated. And I think we've had conversations in think tanks where we know we're kind of where we need to go, but I was like, nope. Let me be more general. And to be more general because, this is really a outward facing document for an internal use. An outward facing document so families can make decisions based on what we're planning on doing to be as most informed as we possibly can. And then to grow it, we're specific enough from an internal perspective to the guidance for each of the particular schools to create plans under that defined guidance.
So we had some discussion regarding that specific area in the plan that was problematic for IRCAA. So our counter proposal with respect to that is going to be that MDUs aren't going to be required to conduct symptom checking through the day. That can be, assisted with the health assistant or the temperature taking throughout the day. However, we will be doing student temperature checks at the beginning of the day. MDUs, I'm going to propose to you, will be able to volunteer and help with that activity if they choose. Ask Mr. Bass, Mr. Meyer, Dr. Moore.
We're gonna be out helping do it.
Yeah,
That was
and
not
district
presented
staff,
that way.
Maybe like me
So,
or
yeah.
some of our staff or some of the people upstairs. So there's other district individuals that are going to be there to support that activity with, intake of students and stuff like that. with the temperature taking as we do that.
Because that came out as teachers would be assisting with that as part of their duties.
And I just.
And in some assistance, that's fine, but it didn't come out the way we're speaking.
Talking with the secondary principal just an hour ago, basically, that was one of the things, I was like, no, I said, the way I see it, teachers could help you. I mean, I know we're gonna have some teachers that will say, hey, yeah, I'll help, I mean, they're just gonna do it.
They are,
But,
that's what teachers do.
and I sent out an email yesterday to the principals of, let me know where you see areas that you're going to need help in supervising students, getting them on the campus, getting them off of campus, and let me know so we can set a schedule up for the people, the district staff. I mean, my whole team knows, the first probably month of school, you're probably not
Clear
looking at
your
your office
calendars.
much at all. I mean, because we're gonna be out in schools doing that, because we know, I know that we extend the lunch periods, by the time the 30-minute lunch that the teachers are guaranteed, and CWA also, there's gonna be a window there that there's not gonna be anybody there for lunch supervision. So that's where we would step in and do that. So,
In other words, we're attempting to fill that gap. We are not going to, sort of corner teachers and force them into some of that stuff. We know some of them are just gonna have the availability and whatnot to
Most of them
volunteer
are,
to do it.
just need to
But
make sure we're
in
protected.
those situations where that's not possible, we're gonna provide the boots on the ground to assist with that and give the teachers an option. So that's our proposal on that.
Can I backtrack a little bit
Yeah,
back to the face coverings and, social distancing? And I know we'll probably get more to this when we talk small grouping and things like that. We know best practice is, as you said, moving around the room and doing things like that. And there is a fear of evaluations if I am staying in the front of the room, that I'm not doing that best practice, and that evaluatively, how will that affect
But how
us?
do we create that language to remove that fear?
Mhm.
And I said it through Ms. Emerson. I see next year as an opportunity to create safe space, to explore new practices. When I say new practices, to begin the year, yeah, it is social distancing, it is providing quality instruction, given the confinements of fear, given the confinements of my own personal beliefs, given the confinements of the reality of space. Let's remove that. What do I have to say to say, you know what? Evaluations aren't going to be whatever evaluations were in the previous years. And I don't know what the appropriate language was. And then as we move throughout the year, really create a new evaluation system that is true in growing and supporting teaching and learning. And I think that's the opportunity I think that I really want to leverage is that back half of the year, where we create an evaluation system collectively, establish a committee, and then we move to something more current this particular year. But we don't have to use anything external. We can create our own and say, this is how it works for us. And I think that from a local perspective is really where we need to go. But I don't want a teacher to feel like, I'm here, I'm okay with the mask, I'm okay with the shield, and I'm okay with my social distancing. That still is better than option 2 or 3. But yeah, I see you struggling
It's still
over
better.
there. And maybe, hey, you're gonna come over here, come to me, let's sit in this particular space, or let's just stand here and let me answer your questions. There's multiple creative things that we can do, even in small group. I think small group really works better on option 3, where you guys go, do your work for the next 20 minutes, read the book, do the chapter, that's fine, but you know what I'm saying. You have to do your I-reading in the confined to this particular class. I want just Tom from 10 to 10:05. I want Susie from 10:07 to 10:09, and we're going to work individually. Or I'm going to call you on the system that we have. Or we're going to speak individually. It's just it's not supervision. I don't think that's supervision. I don't think that's a typical classroom for the hour or the 2 hours or 50 minutes or whatever 100 minutes. It is. Let me take roll. Let me give you an assignment. Let me have you watch this video. Let me give you the time to respond and write your essay and submit it, and I'll grade it. I think we need to create what that particular space looks like, where it's not this confinement of I'm doing everything a teacher does, but on a computer. We're not managing behaviors. We're providing a lesson, we're dictating the work that needs to be done. We're assessing that particular work, we're providing feedback to that particular work, but in the confinements of a period of a set of time, which I think that's the advantage. I know right now my kid isn't guided enough, but he knows from 8 to 9 he's going to be in reading, and these are the activities that he's going to do in reading, and this is the interaction he's going to have with the teacher that reports that out.
And you know,
But
and-
I'm sorry, I went way off. For the math thing, I want the
But
clarity.
this is a good example of one of the problems that we're having right now. So teachers are hearing bell to bell, which is fine. But when you look at an elementary classroom, bell to bell is very different. That means from the start of day to specials, I'm logged in. You expect my first graders to be logged in all that time? But that's how it sounds. I understand what you're saying, but how it's
I've known that from the beginning. but
currently
I wanted to
written.
really present an option and get this on the recording that multiple districts have replicated, in which is more directed by the instructor. And at some point, I think it was at one of the equity meetings, I gave an example that option 2 is my oldest daughter, but option 3 is my youngest daughter. And she needs this is what you're going to do in this confinement of the hour. I don't think it is bell to bell or in elementary, bell to bell, means the early bell to the late bell. It is, hey, here's an introductory of the lesson, here is the review of the particular agenda, at specific times, we need this. I think this problem solves itself when we get in there and put out the direction on, hey, this is what this looks like, this is the 2 days of training. You are facilitating and moving through the pacing guide and providing meaningful instruction. But you are going to release students to go and do work.
So the expectation is, and this is, I guess, where we need to get to, the expectation is that I would still be delivering my 15 to 20-minute lesson, and then they would either be working or
Yes, and
reading or with me.
I would always tell my principals, if you're seeing instruction going over 10 minutes, you probably lost them. And anything over 10 minutes, you need to release, you need to release, you need to release. So just 10-minute segments of this, 12, 13, and then you're really going to know, and I think it creates a neat scenario where I only want to talk to, or as it evolves itself, I want to talk to these 3 particular kids because based on the work they submitted, they need reinforcement and I before E except adversity, whatever it would be.
there's our small groups virtually.
Yeah, and the thing is, this sounds wonderful, but this hasn't been defined, and that's the problem. Everybody seems to have a different visualization of what that transitional,
I agree.
and that's a problem.
No, I agree. It's a problem. Well, it's a real problem in 2 weeks.
Yes.
It's just to solve right now, and I fall back and say, right now, all I'm going to say, this is a more direct, explicit instruction. I think we brand it out, or we say these are the parameters, very similar to this manual, what teaching should be, and the real reason for pushing school back 2 weeks is, okay, if you have one of these models or a section of this model, let's come and let's work you through. So when you start on day 1, no one's going to come in and say you're doing it wrong. And I think done correctly, it becomes a really innovative model that isn't something that's additional work or isn't something where I am in a class to be online for 100 minutes, even in the block scheduling. That's not what it is. It's very similar to, okay, guys, and I always reference high school, that's part of the problem. You're released, you're going to work this. In my rotations, it was 20 minutes of I-ready, it's 20 minutes of I-ready. But these are the kids who need to be told, you need to do this time. And go back, I'll give you feedback. I need you to work on your essay and then submit it. And not, okay, well, you have 2 days to do it and then submit it at the end of the week. And, these are the ones who need help, and I think the good news is they're probably leaving the home. They're going to get their day done with the confines of the day. And that independent reading in the confines of the day. So I think it's creating some of those. But But I didn't want to create that until we actually went through the numbers that we have. Now we have numbers, so I think we still go back Monday or Tuesday and begin to define what to develop.
And talk about numbers and whether or not we're splitting those.
So
Platforms.
let's slow down because we're getting off our topics, but
So where are we gonna start? Let's go, let's get the work done.
yeah, so the topic that we were just talking about was, so we've done.
We got all the way to that
Yes.
from masks.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
just so you know.
Yeah.
If I'm
So,
looking, if I'm
do
following
we wanna
that.
just walk back through like we did before?
not yet.
Not yet,
So,
'cause I was gonna say it
think we
keeps
got
us in
answers to some of
line.
that stuff. One of the
Okay.
answers that we're still, I'm kind of waiting to hear a little more about is the question that you had with respect to the small group breakdown. Like RTI and some of this, kind of working on an answer for that, but Mr. Bass can comment on that.
Well, and I talked to both of you yesterday. I mean, from in the classroom face to face, and then I'll let you weigh in, because I know you will, but I don't see, I don't see how you can do that small group intervention. And what I was saying to them was, let's, and it's kind of your idea too, let's pose that to teachers
And teachers
let
will-
them help come up with the solution. for
I mean, I just came up with a solution sitting here. So one solution that might work for somebody,
Right.
it would be expensive for the county, so will it work for everybody? I don't know. But I think, well, like I said before, if you put enough teachers in a room, we fix it, but it's still gotta be within the confines of the contract.
Mhm.
Well, and that's.
Or we
why-
have to negotiate it.
That's why we want to give teachers the empowerment to set up their social distancing in their classroom in such a way that they can have control over these particular things in their classroom. Because we can't guess from a district level what that's gonna look like for every single teacher. They have to be part of that solution and the creativity that's gonna come out of, how do I solve this problem? And so that's why I wanted to keep that language very broad, so that they have the ability to set up some of that stuff that it can happen. And then if we can't, then we go, okay, what's the next thing? How do we solve that? And.
Broad
Mr.
but
Myers,
protective.
But maybe giving parameters to schools and under what it will and what it will not be. It will be this, it won't be this.
Yeah.
So, and the won'ts be, you're going beyond contract and the wells are within the contract.
Right.
And I think that really is a level of clarity, as you, in a manual, as you release schools to go and do work, it shouldn't go beyond this particular, when you've gone this far, you've gone beyond contract.
Right.
So just confining, this is what it is, this is what it's not, this is the level of flexibility, it is not 100% online, absolutely all day. You can release students to do assignments within the confines of the class. Students can be, can log off and work on those particular assignments if they don't have questions.
One of the concerns with that was, besides RTI, what are the types of activities that?
Well, in reading small group, elementary,
So will that stuff be suspended during that period?
But we're
or-
talking more face to face.
yes.
We're talking face to face in
With
this.
respect to the social distancing and the masking that topic came up.
I think we covered that anything that breaks the level of social distancing, is at the discretion of the teacher.
Is that our comfort, at their
Yeah.
comfort?
Yeah.
And there should be no consequence and I get, it. You're talking about the teaching and learning guide here. Can you do it and say, hey, these, 6 kids are gonna sit, or these 4 kids are gonna be in these particular desks, and I'm gonna do small group instruction with them, while other kids are on the opposite side on the computer, and other kids are working independently? Yes, but you still can do it socially distanced. Very, very different.
The concern was also that with some of the annual contract teachers, that there's kind of a feeling of,
Pressure being brought to bear.
Okay, so
That we can fix right now.
okay, so that's what I was trying to get to a while ago. That is where, and hopefully your unit will trust me enough of working with principals. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a year of unknowns and new things. And the way they have, whatever tool we use for doing evaluations, they've got to understand, no, you've got to think outside the box here. You're not going to be able to hold people accountable to the same way that you have before. And you're gonna have to empower that brand new 0-year teacher and give them some ability to make it work for their classroom. And it may be something that we as veterans have never thought of before.
It almost always is.
We've got to give them that leeway, and that'll be something that I'll be working with them throughout the school year and making sure as to how they're doing those evaluations and what are you actually trying to improve upon, because, and I know I said it to you guys the second day I was here, our first meeting. Performance plans are not and should not ever be a tool to get you. A performance plan should be something to improve that individual so they can assist our students to grow academically. And I believe it, and that's what I'll preach, and that's the way I'll always go with it. You know, and just like whether we get to the end of the year and it's renew, non-renew time, my thing is going to be, and I know he's the same way, all right, you want to non-renew them, tell me why. Show me where you have met with them. Show me where you have tried to help them. Show me where you pointed out there's things that they're not doing that is up to your expectations. And if they don't have it, guess what? That's on you, supervisor. You know, that individual does not know they were not doing the things correctly because you didn't tell them.
Or provide the support.
And
Well,
anything you provided that is a consequence for something that we agreed that they could be doing in its confined reality, throw in the garbage. And so I just want to kind of define, okay, these are the criteria and these are the acceptable modifications which are significant in the midst of this particular reality. And then, you know, for the first semester, none of these things should be considered because we're trying to provide instruction under a very complex reality. Do we all want to provide meaningful instruction? Yes. Do we all want to avoid a shutdown of the district and not be on national news because we you know, or if someone gets sick or whatever? This is real. This is real. So whatever provisions that we need to make with the mask, with social distancing, I think we can be, you know, flexible and say, okay, I'm going to do, you know, U6, U3, or we're going to do it over here. We're going to go out in the courtyard, or we're going to go in the gym, or we're going to go here, and this is how we're going to do it. Is it ideal? Nope, but guess what? None of it is ideal.
That's an understatement.
But what's the, you know, the insurance or the language, I guess I'm asking Michelle, that we can give teachers and administrators to say, hey, these are, we're not doing evaluations and we're not punishing people for trying to do the best in the midst of COVID-19. That there's a level of flexibility.
So
That line that you said, anything that breaks the confines of social distancing is at the discretion of the teacher,
There it
is
is.
a big, I
it's highlighted even on our.
yeah,
construction statement.
that one was,
But this is also something that we've been throwing around too, which is a hold harmless year.
We had, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things, I mean, I know you guys will look at us like, yeah, the district, you know, that, but that's not reality of how it works. And the day-to-day, you know, you have an administrator who strongly wants you to do those small group things or some of that, and the pressure coming to bear. We know that's a reality thing that can happen, but we have offered already to you guys, so that we can, you know, make sure you're feeling confident in taking risks and making decisions. We've offered to have a hold harmless year. We have offered, you know, Scott telling the principals his expectations, Dr. Moore telling the principals his expectations of that pressure not coming to bear. And we've also offered that if those problems are affecting even our annual contract individuals, we have no problem with you going up with problem resolution chain without retaliation. That's against our policy, we're not gonna put up with it.
There's no resolution chain until it is a written policy. Until we write this down or make it an MOU, there's no protections that it happens over and over again.
Well.
And unfortunately, I
again,
think we're gonna have to live a year or so before teachers start to
yeah.
trust.
well, and I just want to also, it's not even, you're setting, this works well, but there is an evaluator issue where sometimes, and it's a teacher issue too. The joke where we teach how we were taught, not how we were taught to teach. We evaluate how we think it should be in the classroom, not how the teacher is actually doing it. My ideas aren't always best, they're best for me. And the evaluators, there are still some who have that viewpoint that wouldn't it have been better if you did this? Well, no, not necessarily. I'm not comfortable doing that. So that
I think we need a
drilling.
Better year to change that thought process, honestly.
But I just wanted to make sure it was out there on the record because that is that big,
Well, speaking of that, it was also announced that we were going to the smaller Marzano, which I know we've talked about.
Yes, we have. That's
but
part of
have
We
it
haven't
negotiated.
actually negotiated it and put it into paper. So some of that would also help because the way it was put out there is very different than how we talked. So we talked about it being a train, try, then pick it up and use it, done, right? So first quarter we'd be training, next quarter we'd be actually practicing it, then we might come back to the training to make sure everything's still working the way we want, train, and then the following year we'd be dead on.
Yes,
Running it going.
that's the.
That is not how it's being presented, though, and I can't come back to you and say, hey, look, this is being broken, or this, whoever is not doing this, because we don't,
Yeah.
it's not anywhere for them to know to do it. So
Yeah.
now we're putting principals in a position where they don't know that they have to do
Yeah.
within this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, and I've heard how some of that was communicated to principals, so that's, if it's being communicated any other way, I don't know how, because it was communicated very similar to that, but this is a year of growing it.
I was so excited about
So,
us sitting down and
that's it.
doing
This
that
is
and
the year
actually making it
to
thorough
train
training.
ourselves under a new, so we'll be training the first, I would say, training, practice, feedback during the entire semester. Evaluations are on pause, but we use, and even for the first 9 weeks, it's just direct feedback on, hey, these are what other teachers are doing,
Yeah.
give the best quality instruction in the midst of COVID. Here's a socially distant strategy that this will create. That's the kind of development. And as we get back to whatever the old normal, then that's when we really begin to grow the tool.
We may never see the old normal. We may have come up with something much, much better than that.
Oh, no, I think in terms of the evaluation, I think we will. But I just want to kind of get it off the hearts and minds of teachers that we're going to create the best scenarios we possibly can, and receive no pressure as we implement those modified particular strategies. Now, I think administrators should, hey, go see how Ms. Jones is doing it, because she's got a really, really cool way. It's still within social distancing, but it's not, okay, you guys, let me get around the kidney table, the kidney bean table, and I'm pulling you. That would be something. Right, that's the best way of doing it, but it's not
It is a kidney table.
necessarily-
That's what they're called. There's the horseshoe and the kidney table.
So what I would say to you is, the hold harmless year is what we would propose with respect to the emergency period, but the rest of what we're discussing, we've kind of had quite a bit of discussion, to me, is a rewrite of Article 4, for the greater contract. And the new TEP manual, et cetera.
Yes.
Yes.
So I would like to propose that we tighten up that language for the new contract while doing the hold harmless year for the MOU standpoint.
Which is what we thought.
That's what we were originally
Mhm.
talking about.
That's what
yes.
we were originally talking
So
about.
if you guys are open to that concept, that's kind of the direction that I think we should go in order to provide those supports.
And as I said, we are very open to it. We've been very open to it, but it was just the problem was some things have been kind of expressed as a foregone conclusion as opposed to
Yeah.
pre-negotiated.
And there's a difference between enthusiasm and the process
Mhm.
that's been communicated, so some of
Well,
those
and
things
currently
are-
we can't, we, as the union, can't answer those questions because we have nothing, I can't pick this up and say, look, they've already told us enough.
Yeah, but let's
Okay.
get it so we can clarify.
Okay.
You know,
Let's
I
do
know
it.
how horses out there running, but if we need to kind of.
Well, we can control
Pull the
horse
reins.
if- You can get hold of those reins if you,
I'm not gonna stop them, I'm gonna pull them
All right.
back and say, hey, let me
Yeah.
grow them in district
So-
administrators, there's nothing wrong with that.
so we beat the dead horse, we're good to go, let's put this on paper, where are we starting?
So to me, we start with, on the MOU, we agree to the hold harmless year. And
Thank you,
then
Dr. Moore.
we start
Thank you.
working-
He'll be back. He's got a call at one.
And then we start working on Article 4 and the TEP process.
Well, usually TEP first and then from the TEP, then we
Oh,
adjust.
and then we'll-
Because and we've gradually been pulling things out of Article 4 because they're in the TEP. But there was,
Article 4 is a hot mess, you gotta fix it.
Article
And
4?
Through that.
Evaluation.
Process and that.
Yeah.
Teacher evaluation
items for the
process.
long term. The short term is the MOU with
Mm-hmm.
respect to this year.
I didn't know
under
either.
emergency conditions. Scott, you go, okay.
Teacher evaluation protocol manual.
Protocol, that's it, protocol.
I am your,
Say it again. We just proposed of the MOU of the whole harmless, and then we work on the TEP and Article 4 with the
100%.
contract.
100%, yeah.
Are you guys
Let's get,
comfortable with
yes,
that?
let's get the
All
language
right,
down so we can sign
So
it.
we'll have that here.
Absolutely.
And, honestly, and I've said this to you guys before, and I'll just say it again, the district wants to keep the teachers we hire. Retention
I want
is
you to keep the
expensive,
teachers we hire.
right?
Mhm.
So we try to hire great, we measure twice, we cut once, but we have to, help them along. Liz told me a story one time about when she was a brand new teacher, it took her about 3 years to be a decent new teacher.
It does.
And it required, mentors, support, the district's patience and some of this other kind of stuff in that process. And I believe this administration recognizes that. And Scott has been very clear with principals that his expectation is, hey, you nurture this thing. So I think that you'll see a shift as we move forward in terms of how we deal with some of that stuff. Because it's hard.
And this is being recorded, and, okay, so I'm just going to say it. My experience in my prior district, and it being a district that we did not have an overabundance of people to hire to be as teachers available to us. And having to, okay, we've got to, and work on it. It's just like, I come here, and I just go through and say, oh my God, we've got X number of openings, and you're looking, oh my God, we got that many applications for this position. I'm just like, where am I at? Because I'm not used to that. It was like, okay, who can we get that fits the certification model? Now let's coach them up. And that's just how I am. That's the way I view it. So, our principals, they may have a hard time getting adjusted to that, but they will get adjusted to it.
So we'll put the protections in and then we'll help adjust.
Yeah.
We'll adjust them. So,
Yep, absolutely. So,
But they have to know what they're adjusting to, and
Yeah.
currently, I think some of that's not even fair to them.
Yeah.
Because we haven't put it down where they can read it.
yes.
and culture changing in that area is difficult, and it takes time and repetitive messaging. And they're starting to get that repetitive messaging, and it'll take a little time. And when the rubber will hit the road is when they're challenged, when they want to be dissatisfied. They said nothing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all of a sudden Thursday, they're unhappy, they don't want to deal with this anymore. That's not the way it's going to go. And a couple of them are going to have to learn that the hard way before we have the culture change to get into the nurturing, the coaching, and the supporting model. Some already do it, and they do it superlatively, but it's a learning process for all of us.
And that was part of the upset, is I don't want us to lose the momentum we have
Yeah.
going towards that.
Yeah, we agree with that, and, there's a way we can memorialize that here, I'm good with it. All right, moving forward.
Where we at?
So disinfectants and wipes was one of the topics that we discussed. And teachers to have choice and while having the tools by which to make choices and options. Therefore, we're proposing that disinfectants in the household, type wipes will be available if needed to clean up their personal space.
And to kids,
And
and to
kids.
children. Got it.
Some kids, maybe their parent doesn't want them to handle some of that, that's fine. Children will have the option. You might not, but the next kid come in and will also be offered that and can either themselves or self-monitor some of that activity. Also, teachers, if they want to, they can opt to touch up, high-touch places if they want to. But understand custodians are responsible for custodial work. And they are going through and doing the deep cleaning and the misting, nightly, weekly, daily.
Whatever, yeah, whatever schedules they come
On a
up
very
with.
prescribed schedule. So the supports are there, but also we're providing tools for them to have choices and options with respect to that. And we are not going to mandate any of that activity for children or teachers. It's just tools that are there to, for them to maximize their own health and safety preferences.
Disinfectants and wipes, would gloves also be?
I believe gloves are also supplied, or available in the building.
Yeah, they're gonna be
Upon request, right?
available upon request. Now, my thought, and this is maybe a little bit of thoughts, but I'm thinking, my kids, okay, you get a wipe from your teacher, and you're wiping down your stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, they're also sanitizing their hands too, is my thought. Now, I'm not a parent that, I like my kids to go out in the yard barefooted and get rough and tough and get bit by mosquitoes because it makes them, it won't kill them, it makes them tougher. But I realize we have parents who also don't want their children to get involved with a chemical such as that. And I can respect that, and there may be skin issues or whatever. So those gloves will be available, but I think it'd be something that over time, you're gonna identify, okay, I've got 3 kids in the classroom, they need gloves. Or their
Or they
parents
don't.
want them to have gloves, so.
Well, it's for wiping, and I was also thinking in terms of going, the gang bathrooms,
So,
because
and in the
to
bathrooms,
minimize
our next problem.
literal touch in those bathrooms, because are the custodians just going to park themselves at the doors all
Well,
day?
we are going to
And
have,
that's not,
It's, yeah, it's not
each
feasible.
school is going to have, each school is going to have additional help, because I don't want to say anything to Mr. Murray, because he's got a meeting tonight. It's going to have additional help, and hopefully that additional help will help keep the gang restrooms sanitized.
So I would ask all of you to double check the policy on gloves. Gloves, as far as COVID go, are being found to not be infected and often encourages more infection.
Right. And
So,
I
but
heard
as for
that too.
chemicals, that's one thing. The other problem we have, since we're on this topic, in elementary school in particular, where they have individual bathrooms within the classroom, the teachers are being told or being asked that they will be having to clean that between students.
that hasn't come from these offices, I don't think. I think that's.
It's one of those things that will need to be clarified
Yes.
for elementary
We will write
specific.
that down and clarify it.
Because and I didn't write it down here, I'm letting you know it came up. Not that most teachers aren't unwilling, we're willing to wipe doorknobs and a water fountain or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's the issue with how much expectation on those individual classroom bathrooms.
Yeah.
they have.
All right, so let's talk.
This comes to those militant principles that we've talked about before. too.
Yeah. And let's.
They're not all like that. Some of them are great.
I like to
So,
call it enthusiasts.
but again,
There's enthusiasm.
I just told you some of my thoughts about parenting. What is, and I may be totally missing the boat here, but what is the problem with, if we're gonna provide wipes to kids when they come in the classroom to wipe down your desk? What is the problem with providing them a wipe if they wanted to go to the restroom? And maybe I want to use the wipe before I flush the toilet, not clean the bowl. But I mean, I'm just,
So the problem is
tell me what I'm missing here.
what we talk about as
Better parents than
helicopter
me.
parenting. My student should not, or my child should not have to clean anything. They're not a servant. They're not. And you look at me like I'm a crazy person, but
No,
this
but would it
comes
be,
up.
but would it be cleaning, versus ensuring that I am not picking up any
My personal
viruses
safety.
by the way I flush the toilet? So, I mean, honestly, okay, so the only 3 things I could really see be involved in that restroom is lifting the toilet lid or not, pull the toilet paper out, or flushing the toilet.
The door, the sink, Yeah,
The lock,
the lock.
Are the sinks in the restrooms?
yes. Well, not.
No,
yes,
not in the stalls.
Not in
No,
the
no, no,
stalls.
in the
Yes.
In the elementary room.
In the
Oh.
elementary rooms, there's one in the bathroom, and usually there's
Okay.
one in the classroom as
Not
well,
in all.
but not in all.
In my mind, I'm thinking the sinks would be on the outside.
Yeah, the
In-
sinks were on the
in-
outside.
The really old school Sebastian Elementary.
Yes,
They're on the outside.
Glendale, all the ones that are in that style.
The
Now, I would
newer
imagine
ones have it-
that,
have them
Ms.
both.
Rubin and whatnot, they discussed some of that from a custodial standpoint. So I'd like to defer the question until we can talk with them and
Yeah.
find out what the current plan is. That being said, the custodians themselves may already be in
Have a plan.
routine with respect to
Perfect.
that. But again, we're not gonna get in the business of having you guys police this stuff. If someone doesn't want their kid doing that before flushing the toilet, that's fine.
So be it.
So be it, but we are providing tools and
Okay.
options for people that choose.
so that's how we
to have
word it.
those options.
That the provisions are there,
Yeah.
Provisions are there,
Yeah.
and the options, so that's,
Yeah. I mean. we're
she's
not
furiously
gonna-
typing, so I'm,
Yeah, we want to provide the tools that if people want to make those choices and options, they can, but we're not going to get into the, communist China sort of way of managing this whole thing. It's just not possible.
Mhm.
It's not feasible, and parents don't have to tell us why. They could have a student with a sensitivity
Mhm.
to various things. They don't have to disclose that to us. They can simply say, look, my kid's not doing all that stuff.
and that's what gloves would be nice to have. I don't think your whole class needs gloves, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I just think for those few.
So, again, we're gonna provide the tools. If people want to utilize those tools, great. But.
And if they don't,
We're gonna have to roll with
have a
it.
nice ventilator trip.
Yeah, but the next individual who goes in there may choose to use those tools. That's just how we're gonna have to roll, I think.
And next?
Yeah, okay, so we talked about, temperature taking of staff members, right, before coming to work. We're gonna rely on the staff to self-assess their symptoms, to worry about and take potentially their own temperature before they come to work and decide if they are symptomatic or sick to.
I mean, everyone's an adult.
Yeah.
They should know. The only thing that I can see is, and we will have those, I know we do. We have individuals who love their job and who might have in the past come to work when they weren't feeling their best. That's going to be a shift in mindset of saying, look, you may be perfectly fine, it may not be anything COVID related, but you may need to
Be
stay.
conservative in
out.
those choices, yeah.
And I speak for my father-in-law, who is a 33-year teacher who has got probably enough sick days to cash out a year and a half.
Wow.
He will not miss a day. He doesn't get sick, but he will not miss a day,
Oh,
period.
listen, Dave's-
He won't take off early. He and I are having this conversation the other week, is, on days that you don't feel top notch, you probably shouldn't go to work. And he goes, that's gonna be hard for me.
This isn't working, so we need to
We have to try.
So as such,
see if there's
okay,
something on the other
our
side.
So-
proposal to the IRCEA is that the staff is
Can
going
you see if
to
there's something on the other
self-assess
side
and
of this?
monitor their own temperatures and fitness levels.
That isn't working.
Okay. And that if they are sick, they agree not to come to work, but we're not gonna be taking the staff temperatures at work unless they.
And that's gonna fall into the illness.
That would be under
Yes.
normal illness.
So-
But if it's a COVID-related
I
illness,
don't
we
know.
would go through the leave process. So say, for example, they start feeling like, you guys should be tested. We would then invoke the
No.
leave process we've developed in HR.
Okay, so then so I have the sniffles. Normally I would go to work, but now we're talking about being conservative. And so I use my own sick day that day to stay out, but then I find out in 2 days that it's COVID. Will I get my sick day back?
You
Nope. Oh, wait.
fill out the paperwork to reflect
Mine,
that,
yes.
And if that's what, you end up getting tested and stuff
Here,
because of
pull
that. Yeah, we'll go back.
So that
and
then I'll have-
assess
Okay,
that.
so
If
we're
the
asking-
documentation is good, yes, we will give you that.
So let me clarify. So we're asking teachers to be in particularly conservative this year. And as we do that, we're going to use up our sick time.
That's done.
If it's not. COVID
Black.
related.
We might not know it's COVID related because not everybody's getting tested. And the tests take weeks to come back.
We're, not really true. We've seen people getting back in 2-3 days lately.
Well, the CDC was just in here Tuesday night saying it's taking 2 to 3 weeks.
Our experience in the leave and accommodation request has been a little shorter than that.
So
Not always.
if,
but many.
let's just say, if,
Michelle?
Michelle,
Okay, I just wanted to let you all know, had, an individual who felt as though they had symptoms and they were able to get tested that day. And they told them that they would be able to get the results back in about 3 to 5 days. And they were tested here at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, so they're doing better
Okay.
with respect to that. We've had a few cases.
Well, the
where
fairgrounds is
people-
fairly new though too, isn't it, Edwina? Didn't that just
Yeah,
start?
for a couple months.
Has it?
Yeah.
thought our-
It's been there for a little while.
Yeah, also, our caregiver partners and other places in town, we're hearing, they're getting more efficient as they go. They're like us, right? We're having to adjust all
Build the
this
plane while we
stuff.
fly?
Yeah, so therefore our proposal would be exactly that, just to,
can you repeat it? I was busy
Yes.
with my
yeah,
plug.
to have staff, self-assess and monitor their own symptoms. If they want to get, excuse me, their temperature at work, when they choke to death from their allergies, they can do that. But if they're sick and they know it, stay home. Be conservative in your self-assessment. So we talked about disinfectants and wipes being provided, and gloves upon request will be available in the building. We are not requiring them to conduct any custodial duties in violation of the contract. Any activity they do to, clean their own areas or, using the wipes to increase their own personal safety or that of their students, is entirely voluntary. Is our proposal. We talked about the virtual/live transitional teaching opportunities, and how that might be determined and what that might look like. So in talking to people today, we would propose the following, that teachers can volunteer for those opportunities when we determine how those are going to be advertised, posted.
How many we have and
Right,
the numbers?
yes.
Okay.
And the needs are known. In volunteering for those, though, we can't guarantee that we're not going to do the cameras and the live. If people volunteer for this stuff, they're going to agree that they're signing up for, we're doing live teaching, it will be on like a Teams kind of forum, it will be live interaction with students, and they're going to have to make a choice whether they want to do that or not. Those opportunities will be offered to those individuals who have been approved for an accommodation first, but what we would like to know is what the IRC believes would be the best criteria, and how do we, we all know there's going to be, 10 of those and 20 people that want to do it. What would the IRC suggest be the criteria and the selection process? We're going to leave that to you guys.
Before we get to criteria,
Yeah.
we're talking about live streaming. What protections does a teacher have then from the county if that ends up on TikTok with something totally different than actually came out of their mouth, or ends up on Facebook with a whole trail of parents bombarding?
That's a great question, and it sparked a great conversation, and I'll have Scott come in and what we kind of talked
We've got to have some sort of parameters, or what was the word I used?
about. Kind of a agreement,
Agreements, yes.
a
In place.
pledge, more or less.
That if they're going to be doing the transitional model, no, you can't put this on social media. If you do, they're going to have to come back to brick and mortar.
It's done.
Yeah, but the damage is done too.
I realize that, from the district's perspective, I think we could probably carve something out that we would not use that as any type of observation, not the right word, but hold that staff, that teacher accountable for it. To an extent.
I'm gonna record all the live stream as well, so that
Okay,
because
so-
TikTok can make it, honestly, you could go on there and make it look like I said anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So here's my thought and Dr. Moore's thought is kind of like what he was talking about earlier. You've got a 10-minute lesson, whatever it may be. Now, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I were a teacher, how would I be able to do this and do it effectively and efficiently, but yet utilize it over maybe several class periods? You record that teaching lesson. Then you say, you get online, okay, we're taking roll, everybody's here, okay, now, next assignment is, click on this link, watch the lesson. And then from there, I would go to possibly small groups. Okay, I need, you four, how about let's take 5 minutes, let's go into the Canvas room and let's work
Okay,
that way.
so, so essentially the lesson, that 10, 15-minute window lesson can be pre-recorded then, and I can use it for multiple classes.
Yes.
But I would sign in live, take my attendance live,
Yes,
answer questions live.
yes.
Yes.
And that to me does a couple of things. Number one, just like what you said, it could be used over and over again. So, like we're in face-to-face classroom and we prepped and by the time you get to the afternoon, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a broken record, do it one time. Here it is. It's going to be the same that every kid's going to see. Then it's that back and forth that you've got to have. That's got to be live of some sort, whether it be in, I guess Canvas has got the breakout rooms in it, doesn't it?
Well, Teams
Teams
is,
is breakout rooms.
well,
Canvas is
and
chat,
does,
it's other stuff.
because, so for example, like I'm recording this even though she's the one who had is there technological limitations to how
can
student
record it?
access to the recordings?
Ooh, I don't know.
Because if that is, I mean,
Well,
Say that one more time.
it's student access to the recordings.
We want the students to not be able to record.
Okay,
I mean, flat out, that's the answer.
okay, so on Teams,
If they can't record me, then they can't put it on any other
well,
platform.
but
Well,
they
but
can
it's- they can
screencastify. I mean, the
they can
problem
do
is
stuff, yeah.
there are so many different ways of doing that it's,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna limit
I mean,
it at all.
I would almost argue that instead of putting the recording through Teams, which has obvious technological limitations, I don't think it should be, I think it should be similar to the way we've designed our Canvas lessons, where a mini lesson is recorded and then uploaded to Canvas. Okay, everybody, we're going to go over to Canvas. You're going to watch this video, this mini lesson. And that
It's
might
within
be,
Canvas.
it's a little bit more controlled. The problem is it's going to require pre-recording and uploading.
And a lot of time.
And I mean, so planning is a little bit more
Extensive.
extensive, but if you're transitional, you're not doing as much of the duty assignments that apparently those of us who are in traditional are going to have. So, I mean,
Which we'll get to eventually.
Yeah,
There's some
'cause
equity
then
issues.
you're gonna
There's
have-
some
yeah.
equity issues in that as well.
yeah, but something to that effect would probably be more, Canvas is a little more, granted, they can still somehow
They can still
download, they can still, screencastify, but there's a little more control in Canvas than Teams, so to
Well,
speak.
I mean, how much issue or is there ever any problems here of a kid being in the classroom and actually sneak their phone out and recording the teacher live?
It's been a problem
It's
over
been a
the
problem.
years.
It's
It's not a huge, I mean, I will say, we have not had a huge problem with it, but the difference is when they're in my classroom, Johnny put the phone away.
Yeah.
When they're sitting there and doing
House.
screencastify, I have no idea that they're doing that. And I have no way of knowing.
until
And
it's too
that's,
And I hate putting it this way, but I'd like to think that most of our parents that have taken the time to think through whether those options are good for them are not our parents
late.
that are.
She's laughing. She's
I know.
gonna teach you.
aw,
I know. They keep
that
going,
is
"You're
so
Yeah.
cute.
So here's
But
something we
here's
can
the
do.
thing, if we get them to a standard of, they're pledging, because that's a trust thing between parents and students too, right?
Is there a discipline if they do it?
Of who, parents?
Well, student.
It would be the student,
Well, the
obviously not the
students
parent.
obviously wouldn't be eligible to continue in that program if some of that kind of nonsense is happening, but, from a parent standpoint, there's libel laws, there's laws. You can't
Yeah,
do
it is
some of this stuff, okay?
I would also recommend that, especially on Teams, there be a requirement for teachers to blur their background. I'm actually thinking this more in terms of protection for all of you than for us, because this popped into my head the other night after hearing about all of the hate symbols. You know, we've banned them in our schools. We haven't banned them in people's homes.
Now, those teachers would be here in the classroom, I understand that.
Transitional, not necessarily.
Transitional, not necessarily.
If they have an accommodation that keeps them to be at home.
And
yeah.
then do the students see each other's houses?
And limitations on video, because now
That was the
you're,
problem with Zoom. That's why we shut Zoom down, which by the way is the better platform.
it is a much better play.
I just thought.
Because then you have control. But
Yeah, I can take control over on Zoom of everybody. And you can't, as the host, you can set it up so that I have complete control of everybody. I can mute their mics, I can turn their cameras off, I can blur their backgrounds, we use Zooms. That's why we use Zoom.
That's why we like our office better.
No, that's not the only reason. That's one.
Yeah, we have better food.
Oh, look, I brought some food.
We need, I mean, all the particulars, I mean, I think it's gonna take somebody with a lot more knowledge about it than I have.
And it's gonna have to be
able work
fluid,
it
I
out.
think, because it's gonna happen
Yeah,
and then we're gonna have to
yeah.
fight with it. So
I just,
is there a way to word this though, so that we have some kind of protection that the county is going to help us with that if it happens?
yes.
If I end up on TikTok and somebody has me saying something obscene,
Mhm.
are you guys gonna help me trace that down? Or is that gonna be all up to me to
Well,
fix my own reputation? If a kid decides to act like a fool and streaks through the camera and my entire class can now see that streak, what happens to me? I mean, I can't stop that. It's not inside my classroom. I mean, there's stuff I can't stop in my own classroom, let alone in the
Yeah, I mean, we can
Immunity
definitely,
from
we can
disciplinary
definitely.
problems.
something like that,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
something like that, yes.
Like a whole harmless.
And I mean, honestly, Jennifer, it'll
Within
probably, at some point in time, it's probably gonna come to me weighing in on it, and I'm gonna be able to, I mean, you know, but I mean, if the teacher just goes on a tirade and loses it.
Well, that's
then
different.
obviously, Yeah, I mean,
It's different.
that could happen too.
Yes, it does.
But then you'll get it from multiple sources though, too,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it'll be
yeah,
multiple.
yeah. So, yeah, we can put something in there, but I mean, we're gonna have to, and I don't think we're gonna get this done today. We're gonna have to sit down and work through the parameters of how that virtual is done.
I think we're still gonna be working on this the first week of school. That kids are.
I think we're going to be continuing
Well,
working
I
on
think
this
it'll be
throughout the
something-
Yeah, we're gonna be, things are gonna be coming
From
up.
an MOU standpoint, I'd like us to agree on the concept that teachers are able to volunteer for the opportunities, notwithstanding the fact that some of those granular details are not yet worked out. And I presume they would be before we make those opportunities available.
I don't think we'll get them all of them. So yes, there should be a clause in there that, I don't think we'll get them all until somebody's doing it. Because you know somebody's gonna go on and do it and we'll
Yeah,
find
something
something that we
silly.
had no.
Well, and see, here's my problem with that. Teachers volunteering for things that we don't know about are teachers providing a waiver for their rights, and that's not okay with
That's not
us.
okay, they can't.
You know, well, they volunteer. Yeah, they did, but the thing is, you didn't tell us what they were volunteering for. You know, and that's the.
Perhaps we can table that one until we get a little more detail.
Because the transition, until we have a full understanding, I mean, like I said, I've heard it described in so many different ways.
I like the way we're describing it, not necessarily live, I'm still pretty hesitant with the live thing, but
Yeah, and you may have a teacher that says, you know what, I'll do it live.
Yeah, oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, and that may also depend upon the students that they're assigned to that class. You know, I mean, that.
well, and you might have more volunteers with that extra line that we just talked about.
Yeah. Let's kind of, can we jump into something else?
Yes.
This is
Well-
something that.
Table that one.
I do want to just put in the transitional teachers,
Yeah, that's-
with the, as far as discipline goes, can we just go directly to level 2? As opposed to dealing with the, if they're, you know, from a grievance standpoint? Because
For transitional teacher issues.
wouldn't you say that? Because I want to talk to you guys, because I don't
Yeah, I
think
wanna
that we
talk
need to,
you, not-
Yeah,
the principals,
Something gets lost between you guys and the principal sometimes, so.
Gotcha.
we can agree to
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah, that's fine.
Write that down.
So let's go back to the.
Write that down,
particularly
Michelle.
The transitional, because, you know, and again, if you recall, and I'm gonna brag on our district leadership here a little bit. We came up with the 3 scenarios probably about 3.5 to 4 weeks before the state says, oh, this is what we want to do. Now, we may not have made it all public what we were thinking about, but we were thinking.
We knew.
Okay, so we were thinking, okay, how can we do all of this? So I think at the time, the transitional teacher was going to be fully would only be doing fully transitional lessons. And I think this is something we talked about on the phone a while ago. Is there an opportunity, because I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at Mr. Meyer and him trying to work with the principals and make this puzzle piece fit with, okay, wow, I need an ELA at this middle school, and I have an ELA teacher that can do 3 ELA face-to-face classes, but yet we're missing someone to do transitional for 2 periods ELA.
So split platforms.
Is that something, and to me, if it were me, and I don't have any accommodations, 100%, I want to come into my classroom, if I'm a transitional teacher, and utilize my materials in my classroom.
Yeah.
I would think that would be my own little kingdom there. I have everything at my disposal here, is the split platform, is that something that, what are your thoughts on
So
that?
this was my big thing with the split platform, is the type of planning changes.
Mhm.
As Liz and I have been working on our Canvas lessons and how we were presenting those, the hours that get put into that, especially when you're first starting it, is huge. I mean, that is a huge burden. And I think at the moment, almost everybody's going to be trained that way, because what if I have to leave? What if my class is quarantined? So we almost all have to be trained on.
What if we get locked down again?
Well, exactly. We almost all now, and we had suggested, Liz and I, when we talked with Michelle, about having those trainings in this first couple of weeks, a couple of those. But here's the thing, the time consumption of planning for virtual and then adding the time consumption of planning for in class. And I'm not talking option 2, I'm talking 3 and 1. So traditional and transitional. That is a pretty heavy burden to put on a teacher. Most teachers are not as ahead of the game that, Liz has got our vocabulary all the way done. So, most of our teachers don't even know they're going to have to do that.
Would it be, and again, I'm just thinking about how I would try to do this.
My guess is it would be not quite as hard, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys know secondary better than I do, not quite as hard in secondary as it will be in elementary, but it's not going to be easy in either space.
I'm thinking about, it's been a while, but teaching high school biology. I could shift the gears real easy to this, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about with streaming. I would go ahead and I would video the instructional part of it, and then if I had 6-period day, 7-period day, 1-period planning, if I had 4 face-to-face and 2 that were recorded, I could see the 6-period recorded one. Okay, I'm teaching the lesson. They would be 1 day ahead. I'm teaching the lesson and I'm recording it. Then the next day, guess what? Okay, kids, okay, because it's gonna be the same message. And here's that recording, and then do the interactions with them after the recorded lesson part. But then that would give me a little time to potentially, I was a multitasker. So, all right, so they've got 10, 15 minutes to watch this, and I'm getting everything ready. I mean, you could obviously working 1 day in ahead isn't the ideal situation, but it would give you opportunity to kind of build on it. I mean, that's just me, and I'm just thinking out loud here.
And truthfully, so I am a digital teacher. I've been a digital teacher for the past 6 years. I have done everything through Canvas, but I teach it face to face, but I have, and this year I did, because of the situation we had last year, I've approached next year so differently by pre-recording mini lessons so that I have them on there. I'm a nerd. I'm good at that. I'm not even going to deny that. I would have a hard time. See, my beginning of the year plan for my digital is to teach them how to use my digital platform.
Right.
I'm going to throw my daughter under the bus. You guys have heard this one.
Yeah.
So yesterday I had the valuable lesson of how to teach virtually my lovely daughter, 23. I have failed her in that I have not properly taught her how to use a can opener. I had to
Handheld,
face
give
to
her that, handheld.
face to face or FaceTime, teach her the proper usage of I would like you to try this one day because it is not as easy as it sounds. Because I can model very well, but if she's holding, okay, you have to hold it to the left a little bit and you have to do this is the most challenging thing that I think as teachers we will ever face. Attempting to teach when we don't have that direct ability to model, to, okay, you're shifting, you're doing this incorrectly and things like that. For me also, ELA is a little bit easier because my things are red.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a math teacher. I can't tell you what you're doing wrong if I can't see how your calculation is going. Are they doing the calculation on the screen? How is that going to work? I could look at somebody's math problem, or a fifth grader, don't make me go higher, but I can look at somebody's math problem and see the errors in there and be able to reteach that skill very simply. In a digital platform, do I have that option? Throughout this whole, I've been trying to help guide my father through downloading books to his Kindle. This is not the easiest task on the planet. I have faced these digital teaching. This is the problem that we're going to have. So that disconnect where you don't have that ability to shift your teaching as quickly as possible because of the distance. And because the students don't have the one-to-one lessons in the beginning on how to log into Canvas every day, do this, do that. When you're doing all of that from a distance, that is extraordinarily challenging. And again, I'm only thinking of the examples that I've faced. And I know, calculus. In God's name, do you teach calculus digitally like that? That is the big problem. So there's so much more planning that has to go involved in that, because you have to try and think ahead of all of the possible things that are miscommunications that are going to happen. You have to, you're going to have to spend a long time teaching those procedures of the digital classroom from a distance.
And then remember, elementary has even less training.
Right.
Because our kids don't use computers
And
constantly.
often, people who are not in the classroom do not realize this.
Yeah.
Yet, because our students are skilled at a phone does not mean they have technological skill. Do you know how many 8th graders I consistently have to teach that the shift key capitalizes a letter? They hit caps lock, the letter caps lock. They do not have true digital skills. So now we're working with students who don't have digital skills, students who don't have, may not have the best internet and such, as they're sitting there giving me their answer and it's getting broken up, that's going to be causing an issue. There are so many issues, especially beginning the year from a distance, that haven't really been thought out. And that's where we're going to have a big problem. I'll be honest, the way I set up my class, give me two weeks with my kids, I could probably then go to digital learning pretty easily. Now, granted, I'm going to still have some of the pitfalls, but because I train my kids, I'll know how to do that.
Right.
I don't know how to do it from day one.
Is there a opportunity here for district and RCEA to work together to come up with guidance for teachers during these 3 weeks? And I realize we got a lot of stuff to do during 3 weeks, but to go ahead and get some of the ones who are not as technologically savvy in a position so they can get there, and then some lessons that we can work with our students when they do come, whether it be face-to-face or virtually, that will prep them moving through the rest of the year. Because honestly, I see times through this year coming up where we may say, okay, unfortunately, school A, we've got too many hot cases, and we're going to close down for 2 weeks, but yet we're still going to have education going. It may be as such that, you know, you're a teacher and someone in your classroom was positive and you got to quarantine, and, you know, that particular class doesn't meet, and you've got to be able to shift right to the distance. And hopefully they don't become sick and can't do that. I mean, is there something that we can do together to prep the teachers for that? I mean,
We'd
I'm
be
sure
willing
there
to,
is.
but I'll be honest with you, you do have a team of, in your IT, the application support specialists, who are eminently qualified for this.
But I think okay, so they are, I hope they're not watching, but IT, they're in IT, but I think we've got to have some teacher input.
Well, and the application support specialist position started several years ago, and they are all former teachers.
Okay.
That was one of the kind of
That
criteria
would
for
be Sally
moving.
Brown and those guys.
Sally Brown, Carrie
I also
Wall.
was a former teacher, but it was years ago. So
Yes.
they up-to-date former teachers.
I know Sally Brown.
Carrie Wall, I would
Carrie Wall.
trust Carrie Wall with almost anything.
Okay.
But here's what I have to tell you. I got onto Canvas. I used the trainings that they gave us. I used her because she's great at Canvas.
Yeah.
But my very first 1 week of lessons took me probably, the only thing for real, because I want to be honest. So Monday, probably 15 hours to do or more. Because just because I understand the concept, I haven't actually worked it. And then you're, oh, that didn't work. And then you have to get rid of that. And then, oh, I thought that would work. And then it didn't save. And then you end up, so this is where I get to where doing a split platform initially might not be.
Thanks for getting back to the split platform. Oh, no, that's good.
But
I am a squirrel, but
what
I'll
I'm
get back to
saying is,
subjects.
I want to, if during those first 3 weeks, we make sure we purposely schedule time not only to train, and do me a favor, train those who need training, and those of us who actually knows, either let us be the trainers or let us dive, and then also allow for time to create. Because if we can, I'll tell you
Create and
something, one of the
train.
reasons I do my vocabulary ahead of time, I don't have to worry about it during the year. I could just upload and boom. That creation is a time-consuming process, because the other thing is, oh, well, we can use iReady lessons. Those are in a PDF. So here's your distance learning problem. Your students are either going to have a printer or be able to write on the PDF, not these, oh, trust me, just
That's not
opening a PDF is a 2-day lesson. I'm telling you that. And so, you know, I mean, in my experience, I just recreate the PDF in a Word document that they can do. But again,
I didn't know
there's
that
more
until you told
time.
me.
And getting back to the, and yes, I got that.
Yeah.
Yes, I got that. When we get done, I'll get with Mr. Meyer.
But train, create, and then train again, or have the availability for a question and answer. Because once you go and create, you realize that you didn't ask the questions you needed because you
Okay.
didn't know you needed them.
Okay. Is there a way that we, and I know we want to come to some sort of agreement today, and this is the one that I see is going to be fluid moving out, or moving through. Is there a way that, you know, and I'm thinking, how can both of us benefit? Our kids are the ones that are benefiting, but if we were to have language where we will make every effort to, you're either transitional or you're face-to-face, but there may be some split platform in areas that are kind of needed, And it would be obviously voluntary for who would want to do it. But then I think we don't need to throw somebody to that who's not equipped to do it. I mean, there's got to be, so that's where I want to appeal to you guys is how do we determine who gets those
Opportunities.
spots, do it,
Opportunities.
opportunities?
One thing I do want to just, on that section where you said, if they need that one little piece, I think if we make some sort of a commitment that that one little piece is not an additional, a different plan, prep.
Okay.
Because I think that's very important. If I'm teaching 6th grade reading and then all of a sudden I have a 7th grade transitional, that's a whole new prep to plan for. So to be able to have consistent, and I mean, truthfully, I would also push that anybody who's doing both can have no more than 2 preps.
Okay.
Because of the excessive amount of time.
And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about all this, and I'm thinking about Mr. Meyer up on the 2nd floor, working with principals right now, and he's got the list of the ones that where accommodations are and trying to get that worked out. I think we need to agree to something that we will continue to work on this, because I think Rick may come back and say, Scott, we can't, here's this situation.
Here's the numbers.
How do I fix this one? I think it's something that is only fluid, but your idea about the preps, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm doing 6 biology classes, heck yeah, I'll do the split platform, absolutely. Because I'm thinking to myself, during the time that I've given the instruction part, or, okay, we're going to log off now, you've got another 20 minutes, and particularly block schedules. Think about that. The one thing I was thinking about block schedules was, wow, you may have an hour and 20 minutes. And that's, to get as much stuff in and keep everything, the climate of the classroom moving in the right direction. It was a challenge at times. But now I'm thinking, okay, I've got a segment here of 20 minutes that we're going to have direct instruction. Then, okay, I could have a window of time here, 15 minutes, where you need to get this done. Okay, we're going to get back on at this time. And I mean, to me, the possibilities are endless. But I think Rick's will come eventually and say, Scott, here are our problem areas. And I think we need to, I would love for us to agree on something where we would continue to work with that, but just not say, absolutely no.
Can we start with at least stay in the same grading subject?
Oh, I think so. I think that would be 100% the way we would.
We can start there with the caveat that we continue to make it fluid, something, however we want to word that.
So,
But that we start with, if we're going to split platforms, you're not going to have a reading teacher then doing a math, or a 6th grade teacher then doing an 8th grade reading. Right?
Just because they're certified
Just
for it.
because they're certified
before we
for
get
it.
that far in the weeds without some of the subject matter experts in the room, can we at least agree that those opportunities when offered are going to be the teacher's option to accept or not, sign up for or not sign up for?
Okay.
But if they sign up, they're signing up for, what.
Are you going to tell them what they're signing up for?
Well, presumably before we post this opportunity.
What? Why are you laughing at me?
Well, we can tell you right now, there are some who've already been people have been asked already
Already, yes.
So what do you mean? By the principal?
to,
Okay, well, that is not, you need to be authorized.
No, it is not. I have not said one word about going to
Okay.
sign them. 100%. No, I mean, first and foremost, we've got to go through the people who qualify for the accommodations.
Mhm.
And I'm just looking right now, this is just a complete guesstimate. I'm looking right now that we are not going to have enough teachers for the number of students virtually. I've got to take this.
Go ahead.
Of course. Do you want to just take
Do you wanna take
I
a
gotta
break?
get up and walk and grab a snack. We're going to pause the recording.
Yep, let's take a little break and we'll come back.
I don't know how to pause.
Less 10, go less, not more.
Okay.
I want to go home today. How you doing, Ren?
That's what I get back.